All right, we have minutes to approve from August 13th. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes? Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the minutes of August 13th. I'm sorry, yes, August 13th to be approved as written.
Second.
All right, let's vote. Council, just a minute, excuse me. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. Since I was absent, I will not be voting on these minutes.
Okay. Let's vote. That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Santos not voting because he was absent last week. So, Valerie, is there any agenda revisions or submissions of documents?
Yes, Mayor Coombs, we have two, actually. Item 11A was the Human Service Agency funding recommendations. That full report was emailed to you last week. Portions of it were in your packet already. And then item 9C, there is a revised resolution. It's at your desk tonight, Resolution R 2013. That's regarding the broadband ballot issue, and staff will review the revisions. We'll pull it from consent later.
Okay. City Manager, do you have a report for us?
No report, Mayor and Council.
All right. I guess it's time for special reports and presentation. So nothing there. So first call, public invited to be heard. Please come down and state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Richard Uday is the first one up.
I'm Richard Uday, 4042 Hawthorne Circle here in Longmont. I speak in favor of the bond issue that is before us tonight, and I was particularly pleased, Mayor Coombs, to see your letter arrive in my mailbox yesterday. I thought that was absolutely appropriate expenditure of city funds to for the city to have done as much work as has been done on the providing wonderful opportunity for the fibers to get to everybody's house, and to essentially report that to the citizens along with your recommendation. We look forward to the benefits of the fiber to the home. All the tech folks in my neighborhood are very strongly in favor of that. I'm past president of our HOA, and our HOA would love to have been in on the distribution of fibers to the home. Unfortunately, we set up a budget for things like fence fixing and playground equipment and the like, and had not set aside enough money to let us get in early on the on fiber. But anyone that I know in town is very strongly in favor of this entire project, and I really like the model that is being proposed to the voters, that the users will pay for that fiber, not just everybody, but I expect that there will be very large take on that. So, way to go, guys! I'm really looking forward to how this is going to be going.
Thank you, Richard. Steve Elliott?
TV1. Okay. Should be cooking here. Yeah? In it today?
So please state your name and address for the record, Steve.
I'm Steve Elliott. I live at 800 Martin Street. And there we go. All right. I'd like to say a few words about the fiber optic. There we go. How many times do we have to say yes? I'm hoping only once more. I thought this was a done deal, but we're on a roll, so let's not stumble now. Here's a quick quiz for you. You don't have to answer now, but it will be on the agenda the next time you come to coffee with the council. So, what kind of businesses do we want to have in Longmont? And you'll discover that there's a sweet spot in this picture, and those businesses are the ones that will be using fiber optic. What kind of education do you want? There's the tried and true method, or there's the method that we can do through fiber optic, which allows students to look at the videos at homework at night.
We could integrate over the surface, and the notation usually is a capital Sigma, National Assembly. They create the Committee of Public Safety. This sounds like a very nice committee. A galaxy. Hey, there's another galaxy.
And so the paradigm is the teacher walks in every day, every kid works at their own pace, and they look at this dashboard. Every row is a student, every column is one of those concepts. Green means the student's already proficient. Blue means that they're working on it, no need to worry. Red means that they're stuck. And what the teacher does is literally just says, let me get one of the green kids who are already proficient at that concept to be the first line of attack and actually tutor their peer.
So that's another way we can use fiber optic to really enhance the way that education is used. So what's going to be the most effective employee around here? The one that just drove up from Denver? Or the one that shows up on video conferencing? And hey, fiber optic is the way to go as far as I'm concerned. I want to be at home showing up on video conferencing. And we can cut down on the transportation. What kind of transportation options do we have? This one's called batch and queue. Queue them up, batch them into the bus, get them off. And we're used to this one. That's pretty exciting. And then there's another option, which is get on your fiber optic system and reserve your pod and have it come and take you wherever you want to go. I can't wait 40 years for fiber. I can't wait 40 years for fast tracks. Let's get with the program here. So, Tom Fry from the Da Vinci Institute has been studying successful cities. Successful cities are tilted. They're tilted in a direction that will attract businesses with a particular persuasion. We want to attract those businesses. We have an opportunity here to build the right infrastructure, build it and they will come. Let's get busy. Fiber optics is the first step. Let's take that. Let's get it on the ballot so I can vote for it again. And as my friend Rich Kirch used to raise his glass, here's to life on a tilted planet. Thank you much.
Thank you, Steve. Kat Bradley Bennett.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Kat Bradley Bennett. I live at 5914 Blue Mountain Circle in Longmont. I didn't bring my tablet or really wonderful visuals like Steve. That was just awesome. But watching that presentation, I'm thinking, that's our future, right? When I worked 15 years for the EcoCycle program here in Longmont, I was driven by a passion for a clean environment and for a healthy, forward-looking community. When I left that job in 1999, I found a new passion, teaching adults, and specifically for me, teaching English. In 2002, I was lucky to stumble upon St. Vrain Valley Adult Education. Lucy Stromquist hired me. She was one of the original founding directors. And I taught there for 11 years until that program closed in June. That closing left a huge hole in this community, and the effects of that have not yet been felt by the community at large yet, but they have been felt in certain circles. The number of calls that come to El Comité asking about where can I go for education, the number of high school students who were enrolled at Adult Ed here who have now had to go to Boulder, have flooded the Boulder Valley Family Literacy Program. So the effects are being felt. I'm here to say it takes a village. And along with some other village members, I have been happy to be part of this struggle to continue adult ed services in Longmont. You probably know we successfully got 2 federal grants to fund a new program, beginning with just ESL this year. Members of our staff and our task force are in the audience tonight. With the gracious donation from the St. Vrain Valley School District, we've got our textbooks that are written specifically for adult students, but it's going to be a challenge. We need space. Space costs money. We need an accounting service, because let's face it, we're teachers. We're not accountants, and we have to be able to stick to the rigors of 2 federal grants, and that's going to take an accountant. We need technology in the classrooms. You just saw Steve's wonderful presentation. Students need computers in class. They need to know how to use tablets and iPhones and those technologies that are necessary for the workforce now and for the future. I want to just share a few stats with you. 75% of prison inmates in the United States are functionally illiterate. That could be reading and writing, it could be math, it could be technology. Many immigrants in our community don't have the English skills necessary to function independently, talk to their child's teacher, or get a better job. There's a quantifiable link between the literacy of parents and the literacy of their children and how well their children do in school. It's a direct link, it's been researched, and it is quantifiable. So I'm here tonight to hope as you begin your discussions on funding human services in the city that you will agree with me that you will see the importance of adult ed in Longmont and consider our efforts as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Marilyn Hughes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Marilyn Hughes, and my address is 1126 4th Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I am on the St. Vrain Community Adult Ed Task Force. That's quite a mouthful. I had to practice saying that a few times. And I have read the Health and Human Services report that was in your packet. And I'd like to point out how the adult ed school that Ms. Bennett just described would benefit Longmont and deserve City Council support. Based on the large amount of data collected from the Health and Human Services environmental scan, the community input and agency stakeholders, it's easy to see how the newly developed St. Vrain Community Adult Ed School would tap into both Tier 1 and Tier 2 target areas. Those were considered in the report to be the most immediate concerns for Longmont. The school would provide access to education and training, including parental education and skill development, basic literacy skills, English language skills, and life skills. These, in turn, would lead to livable wage jobs. All these facets of education fall under the Health and Human Services priorities of basic needs, preparing children and youth for success, increasing adult self-reliance, and leading toward a safer community. These are common threads that the St. Vrain Community Adult Ed School would significantly impact. The development of the community school has come a long way in a short time. but we need council's help to fill the void that would be left without an adult ed and ESL program in Longmont. The Health and Human Services data strongly suggests that supporting the St. Vrain Community Adult Ed School will greatly benefit the community at large and provide much more than an ounce of prevention. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave DeParnier? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Dave DeParnier, 2224 Harvard Court, and I'm here to talk a little bit about fiber optic in Longmont. I'm one of the co-owners of the Pump House Brewery, and we're one business that's been lucky enough to have the LPC fiber optic service so far. And I just want to say that we're really happy with it. It's been very high speed, high reliability. The installation went perfect. The customer service has been great. Right now we're paying a very competitive price for better service than we had with our previous provider. The other people that have already spoken about it kind of stole some of my thunder here, so all I'll say is I hope that it gets put on the ballot this November, and so that I can not only have it in my business, but in my home. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Camby Nahir?
Hello, my name is Tammy Neer. I'm here to speak on behalf of CenturyLink. We have offices located on South Lincoln Street here in Longmont. I am the area operations manager for Northern Colorado, and that includes the city of Longmont. CenturyLink is a long-term committed partner to the residents and businesses of the city of Longmont. Over the last 5 years alone, CenturyLink has invested more than $17 million in Longmont, upgrading our network of more than 200 miles of fiber to bring the benefits of advanced high-speed broadband availability and performance to the residents and businesses of Longmont. As an example of a benefit of CenturyLink's capital investment in Longmont, we're proud to say that 7 out of 10 residents currently have access to CenturyLink advanced broadband at speeds of 20 meg and higher. Obviously, we're concerned about the proposal in front of the council tonight for 3 key reasons. First, as a tax-paying business in Longmont, this proposed $43 million spend for a to-be-determined project comes without a specific plan. Risking $43 million is not a strategy that will help drive the local economic health of Longmont. Second, as we've seen in countless communities across the country, including Salt Lake City, Utah, Palo Alto, California, Provo, Utah, municipal entry into a highly competitive marketplace is destined to fail. Ultimately, when they fail, it is the residents and businesses that are forced to bear the burden of these failures. This eventual cleanup typically entails redirecting valuable tax dollars away from needed services. This is not in the best interest of the residents of Longmont and will ultimately come at a very high cost. Third, Longmont is a competitive marketplace with CenturyLink, cable, and other facility-based broadband competitors. This is providing Longmont businesses and residents a choice in an efficient market, driving innovation and rational investment. Longmont does not need another self-funded competitor. Longmont is very important to CenturyLink. We have operations located in Longmont and many employees who live and work in this community. The success and ongoing viability of Longmont is critically important to CenturyLink. As such, we do not see the need for the city of Longmont to assume such high risk by spending $43 million to create yet another broadband competitor. At the end of the day, it is the residents and businesses of Longmont who will pay the price. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly Gibbs.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kim Gibbs, and I live at 7468 Mount Sherman Road. I'm here to speak about the airport and the noise from the skydiving jump planes. So 2 weeks ago, I came and spoke to you, and Kara Cook attended with us. She's our attorney. She works at the law office of Randall Weiner, and she's going to be representing us. Just want to recap a couple things. We talked about the city's authority to adopt reasonable regulations to address community noise concerns at the airport. We talked about the Airport Noise and Capacity Act and how that act, ANCA, really does not apply to the noise problem that we have here in Longmont in Boulder County. So why would we even bring it up? Why does it come up? Unfortunately, after 2 years or more of presenting information, we still do have some city council members and some other officials and even wording on the airport website that indicate that ANCA is the reason that you cannot adopt reasonable regulations. And so we have to keep coming back here and educating you and the community and hopefully having a conversation about that. I want to move on to proposed solutions. We talked a little bit about that 2 weeks ago. Mr. Bagley, if you may remember at the council meeting back in December of 2011, Mr. Bagley was asking about solutions, and I love that. I love focusing on solutions and how do we solve the problem. While you didn't come right out and say it, it really implied to me that you were acknowledging that there is a noise problem, and some of you have hinted at that, but no one has yet to take a stand. And so we'll be pressing council members and candidates for office, you know, the election's coming up, to take a stand. So what are some proposed solutions? First of all, conducting a noise study. You've got to conduct a noise study so that you have accurate data upon which to make decisions. It needs to be a comprehensive noise study. It doesn't have to be a Part 150 noise study, but it needs to be comprehensive and a little more sophisticated than the airport manager going out in somebody's yard with a decibel meter. It's a good start, but really I think we need something a little more than that. You can limit the hours of operation and the number of operations for Mile High skydiving. Whether or not it is in their lease, you have that authority. I haven't talked about this before, but you can ban that Twin Otter. That's the biggest point source of noise in this whole in North Boulder County, and we need a solution to that. Can't do it arbitrarily. You need some noise data, okay? Noise data is important. Reviewing that Mile High lease for their greatly expanded operation, which would cover 108,000 square feet. It was signed in 2007. It's still inactive, has yet to be executed. I think that's ripe for review and canceling. Thank you so much.
Thank you. DJ Molney.
Good evening. My name is DJ Molney. I live at 2713 15th Avenue. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've worked in the software industry since graduating college in 1980. I helped grow a telecom software firm for about 17 of those years, serving as chief technical officer and a member of their board of directors. Despite my eventual departure, I'm pleased to report they're still in business and trading on the NASDAQ today. Later in 2007, I co-founded a medical software firm, and we do much of that work here in Longmont. Our services are entirely web-based, which greatly simplifies operations for both ourselves and our clients. I do most of my work from my office at home. My partners are spread across 3 states, and our hardware infrastructure is in a 4th. Needless to say, network connectivity is a key enabler for our business. When I started tinkering with computers in the mid-1970s, PCs were unknown, and access to technology was pretty limited. That has really changed. In the last 4 decades, we've seen processing power jump by a factor of 1 million or more, hard drive capacity. Well, there weren't any hard drives back then. They were just floppy disks, as you recall. Now you can store 6 million floppies on a hard drive. Network bandwidth in the U.S. has gone from 0 to an average for homes and businesses of over 8 megabits a second. Not bad, but not what it could be. Which brings us to fiber, gigabit fiber. Over 100 times faster than what the average connection is in the U.S. today, 20 times faster than anything you could buy today in this town as a citizen. A gigabyte lets you move data with the same speed as your computer's own internal hard drive, effectively upgrading network connections from slow cousins to peers. Consumers got to enjoy the benefits of faster computer technology as soon as those devices hit the open market. But home network connectivity has not kept pace because of the inherent limitations of the existing coax and twisted pair networks operated by the incumbent carriers. They can't or won't make the investments necessary to provide service at the level we're talking about. When electricity was first rolled out across this country, the killer app was the light bulb. That alone was enough reason to build out all the infrastructure in generating and transmission. Few envisioned everything that we would eventually do with electricity: cooking, cleaning, moving water, heating and cooling, everything else. We're far enough down the road with the internet now to have seen multiple killer apps and no end in sight. And just as increased computing power has led to better and richer software, faster internet connections facilitate more and better services. I've used my allotted time to make somewhat of a technical case for the benefits of gigabit connectivity. There are plenty of other benefits that I know the other speakers will touch on. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I urge you to approve the broadband ballot measure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Douglas Hines?
Good evening. My name is Douglas Hines. I live at 816 Fifth Avenue. Mayor Coombs and members of the council. I don't know why Longmont Power and Communications decided, and the early residents of Longmont decided to offer electric service as a nonprofit, but I'm glad they did. For generations, families and businesses chose to move to Longmont, and low utility rates helped sway their decision. We now have the opportunity to follow in their footsteps by offering a 21st century utility, fiber optic internet access. Fiber in Longmont, available to all residences and businesses, will make Longmont a preeminent location in Colorado for businesses and families to call home. It will grow Longmont into an economic powerhouse that other cities will strive to catch. Please help us invest in our future, our children's future, Longmont's future. Thank you.
Thank you. George Oliver?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is George Oliver. I live at 120 Canadian Crossing Drive. Well, here in a little while, you'll be voting on one ordinance and two resolutions concerning the broadband fiber deployment. You've heard others speak of the benefits that this will bring to the city, and those are many. They touch on economic development, they touch on our education system, they touch on health care, they touch on the quality of life for the average individual Longmont resident. A lot of cities in this country have already rolled out a similar deployment and done it successfully. The risks of doing this are minimal. The benefits are great. Moreover, we're already in this business. This is not a clean sheet kind of grassroots project. We already have fiber in the ground. We're already doing this successfully. And I'm standing here to urge all of you to vote and approve those three items on the agenda and move this project forward. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Dixon Dick? And he'll be followed by Jason Sherry.
Hi, I'm Dixon Dick. My address is 2321 Watercress Court in Longmont. Pleased to speak to you again. And I'm urging the council and mayor to vote for the issues that are in front of them tonight in favor of the bond issue. I'd like to quote, I forget actually who says it, education is the single most important investment that we can make because that's our future. And to date, the bandwidth that's been provided to our educational system has frankly been rationed. It's been rationed in a way that benefits others and doesn't necessarily benefit our community directly. So I would like to urge the council and everybody to remember that when we're voting for this bond, we're voting for education. We're voting for that collaboration that the students can have within the city and throughout the nation and throughout the state so they can reach other universities and reach other like students and like groups. This is a vote for them. Please go for it.
Jason Sherry.
Jason Sherry, 709 Gay Street. Thank you for hearing me today. This topic is important to me as someone who works from home and has been on the internet since the early 90s. I provide email and web services to friends and family also for my home internet connection. Currently, we have two options for high-speed internet in Longmont, one of those being Comcast, the other CenturyLink. The first company has proven over and over again that they do not have the consumer's best interests in mind, both from their monopolistic practices in the entertainment communication industry and to their support for internet censorship and control, and finally, their poor customer service. CenturyLink may be better than Comcast, but in some ways, but in the last 7 years, I've paid them $50 a month for a total of $4,000 for services that will be 1/20th of the speed that I hope to get from LPC with the fiber services. In the last few years, I've transitioned from traveling 80% of the time to working from home 95% of the time. The only way I've been able to do that is due to having high-speed internet at home. But the internet access I have at home, which is the fastest that CenturyLink provides today, is not fast enough. I also do not want to continue to give my money to a multinational company based out of Louisiana when I believe this should be a basic service like water and power is today. I would be willing to pay $1,000 right now to get hooked up to the Longmont fiber ring today. If Longmont does not move forward aggressively with providing fiber internet service to homes and businesses, companies will start to move away, will not move here, and as will individuals. Working from home saves people money, time, it's better for the environment, and increases worker productivity and satisfaction. So please move forward as soon as possible with approving anything that needs to be done to get the fiber business to home and to homes and businesses in Longmont. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Schnutzmeyer.
Pardon me. Thank you, Mayor Coombs and Council. I am Mike Schnauzmeyer, 12001 Twilight Street, Longmont. At the Council's annual retreat, we heard from keynote speaker Dave Manny that the world is undergoing an unprecedented economic revolution while transitioning into the digital information era. Entrepreneurial startups are a key to surviving this revolution. Jim Clifton, CEO of Gallup-Poll Industries, states in his book, The Coming Jobs War, What Every Leader Must Know About the Future of Jobs Creation, that a global jobs war is coming and there is no time to waste. The cities that act first, that focus everything they have on creating good jobs, are the ones that will win. Not just any job will do. You want good jobs, knowledge-based jobs. Aim everything at those. In this effort, every city requires its own comprehensive strategic master plan that is as serious as planning for war. Other authors go on to suggest that while work today can be globally distributed, ironically, hyperlocal placemaking is now more important than ever. They argue that these highly skilled creatives are highly mobile and can live anywhere. Vital is that this talent will be attracted to locating in cities that have a flourishing startup community culture, where they can spontaneously interact with other like-minded creatives for starting new businesses. It is now widely recognized that planning for urban innovation districts to nurture this activity is critical to this new economy paradigm. Optic fiber is critical to this infrastructure, and for Longmont becoming a city attractive to millennials to want to live, with a thriving collaborative entrepreneurial culture imperative for Longmont's future. The future of Longmont's children is also at stake. The Race to the Top STEM program is an amazing opportunity for educating today's children towards having a brighter future working at smart jobs rather than Walmarts. If we want them to be able to live, work, and play and continue to stay in their own hometown, fostering local startup businesses is imperative. With our beautiful settings, STEM program, municipal power, and now optic fiber, we have a brief window of opportunity to bring Longmont to the attention of the nation as a unique destination for an entrepreneurial activity. Optic fiber will attract creatives, new businesses, and job growth. Fully capitalizing on this, however, will require a vision for transforming Longmont into becoming a 21st century innovation city with a thriving innovation district. Together, these are all vital components in our strategic plan during this war for jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicki Coder followed by Ron Thomas. Is there a Vicky Coder? Okay, we'll move forward to Ron Thomas.
Thank you. Ron Thomas. Address is 1439 Pratt Street. My name is Ron Thomas, and I live, work, and play in Longmont. I'm here today to speak in favor of submitting to the electors the ballot question regarding gigabit fiber broadband and to encourage the council to fully support the expansion of gigabit fiber broadband to all businesses and homes in Longmont. During the financial crisis of 2009, my employer centralized all operations to the East Coast, and our Boulder office with 30 employees was closed. I was given a choice: uproot my new wife, leave my friends, family, and everything I love to move to New Jersey, or become unemployed. Fortunately, high-speed broadband gave me a third option. With the cooperation of our employer, I and 4 other employees were able to become remote workers and retain our jobs in the place that we loved. I'm lucky in that the complexity of my job is performed primarily in my head. From a technical standpoint, my working environment is pretty simple. I make phone calls, send some emails, occasionally host global web conferences. With today's technology, I only need about a drinking straw's worth of data. The broadband I receive today is a big enough straw. Other workers in this digital age handle as much data in one day as an assembly worker might handle steel. Engineers who work with computer-aided drafting, or an animation artist who's constructing a scene for the next Pixar movie, they're just 2 small examples of jobs that require a major water main of data. With gigabit fiber broadband, the City of Longmont has the potential to provide a link to that data. With my specific job and specific technology requirements, I'm able to do the job I love from the town I love. I encourage you to support gigabit fiber broadband in Longmont so that other workers might have the third option that broadband gave me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Emily Diddy.
Hi, my name is Emily Diddy. I'm the Executive Director of Boulder County Care Connect, and I see a lot of friends in the room tonight, which is great. Our Longmont office is located at 615 Main Street inside the Center for People with Disabilities, so please stop by sometime. I'm here tonight to acknowledge the work that went into the Human Service Agency's proposal that you're going to hear tonight. The staff, as well as the advisory committee, worked very hard to get a lot of input, and I wanted to recognize that. I also wanted to thank the City of Longmont and a lot of individual donors that are in this room tonight for your past support of our organization. For those of you who don't know, we started in 1972, and we provide services to low-income seniors and adults with disabilities so that they can stay independent, whatever that looks like for them. We work with a variety of partnering agencies here in Longmont with specialized services like El Comité and the Hour Center. We work with, obviously, the Center for People with Disabilities and many, many more that I cannot even name. So I appreciate that the proposal you are going to be reviewing tonight includes a broad spectrum of support. We have growing need in Longmont, which I'm sure you're well aware of. And I thought that tonight I would tell you a success story because I think often it's important for you to hear how your support is being translated down to the individual. So I'm going to introduce you to Mary, who can't be here tonight because she's living alone and is somewhat isolated. She's lived in Longmont her whole life and has been very lucky to stay in her home of more than 40 years. She lives on a very limited budget, and over the last couple of years, she was diagnosed with macular degeneration, which has become increasingly difficult for her to do day-to-day tasks. Driving is a huge issue for her, so anything that you do right now using your car, imagine what that would be like to no longer be able to do those things. So the great thing is each week a Boulder County Care Connect volunteer is able to bring Mary her groceries. When she needs to go to her very painful eye treatments at a specialized center out in Lafayette, our escorted medical service provides a ride for her, and the volunteer stays with her at that appointment. Also, when she needed grab bars, we were able to install those for her. And we clean up her yard when she needs that so that her street continues to look nice. That's all I wanted to share with you tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Emily. Is there another last call for Vicki Coder? All right, I'll go to Strider Benston.
Thank you. I'm Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. I would like to honor the March on Washington 50 years ago tomorrow, and also the one last week, and the President speaking tomorrow. But I came to speak about a non-event which people may have already forgotten about, the non-mass killing in the elementary school in Atlanta a week ago. The man who came in, the deranged man, was well armed. He had an AR-15 and 500 rounds of ammunition, and with the capability to kill as many people as possible. Thanks to the heroic service of a bookkeeper named Antoinette Tuff, nobody died. Therefore, it doesn't fit the narrative. It's not on the agenda. You don't see it in all the newspapers and commentary for weeks and having a big social movement about how can we do this right instead of wrong. It doesn't fit the narrative of Wayne LaPierre. The Colorado State Legislature this year passed a couple of minimal provisions for gun safety and social safety, background checks, 15-round magazine limits. But the gun thugs, well-financed, immediately set out to overthrow the democratic process, and they have recalls for two state officials, including the former police chief, president of the Colorado Senate. We need an agenda of truth, justice, decency, and humanity, but these are not on the agenda of the gun thugs. Theirs is to arm the bullies, the bigots, and the fools, to kill as many people as possible, create fear, and therefore they sell more guns. That's how they do it. More guns to everybody. We need a social agenda for social, economic, educational, infrastructure, mental and health services. Otherwise, we will have no society to protect. Keep your mind on what you're here for. Thank you much.
Thank you, Strider. That ends first call, public invited to be heard.
Mayor Coombs, your first item on second reading is ordinance 2013-37, a bill for an ordinance amending section 4.18.010 and chapter 4.98 of the Longmont Municipal Code on combining the electric and telecommunications utility enterprise funds into the electric and broadband utility enterprise fund. There is no formal staff presentation on this, but we do have staff here to answer questions.
Is there any questions from council before I open this up to public hearing? Seeing none, I will open this to public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak from the audience on this issue? I guess seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Councilmember Levison.
Yes, Mayor, I move ordinance 2013-37 for adoption.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Your next item is ordinance, it's item 8B, ordinances 2013-38, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the real property known as FBO hangar parcels 1 and 2 and South FBO hangar parcels SH6T and SH9T to Chippewa Aerospace Incorporated, doing business as Elite Aviation. And then also, as part of this item, is ordinance 2013-39, which is a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the real property known as Vance Graham Municipal Airport Hangar Parcel NHT2 to Air West Flight Center Incorporated. And we do not have a formal staff presentation on this item either.
Okay. Is there any questions from council before I open this up to public hearing? Seeing no one, I will open this to public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this issue from the audience?
Mayor Coombs, I think you can do one public hearing for both
Yes,
ordinances.
that's what I am doing. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Councilmember Katie.
I'd like to move ordinance 2013-38.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0. Councilmember Witt.
I'd like to move ordinance 2013-39.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Your next item is your consent agenda. Item 9A is ordinance 2000.
No,
Oh, I'm
what
sorry,
about
I missed
C?
one. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ordinance 2013-40. It's a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 6.88 and 13.24 of the Longmont Municipal Code on tree trimming licenses and trees and plants. And this is a second reading and public hearing. We don't have a formal staff presentation on this item.
Okay. Are there any questions from council before I open this up for public hearing? All right, I'm going to open this up for public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this issue at this time? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing on this item. Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. As I like trees, I move that we pass and adopt ordinance 2013-40.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote.
And I will vote for it too.
All right, that passes 7-0.
Now we're ready for consent agenda. Item 9A is ordinance 2013-41, a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for the expenses and liabilities of the City of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2013. Public hearing and second reading is scheduled for September 10th. Item 9B is ordinance 2013-94, an ordinance amending the 2013-2017 capital improvement program. Public hearing and second reading scheduled for September 10th. Item 9C is Resolution 2013-77, submitting the ballot question to the registered electors of the City of Longmont, Colorado at the municipal election to be held November 5, 2013, of issuing bonds payable from the city's electric and broadband utility enterprise revenues to finance fiber optic and cable improvements to provide high-speed broadband service. Item 9D is Resolution 2013-78, a resolution of the City of Longmont urging Longmont citizens to vote yes on ballot question 2B, issuing revenue bonds to finance an advanced fiber optic system in order to expediently provide high-speed broadband services to all businesses and residents on the November 5, 2013 municipal election ballot. Item 9E is Resolution 2013-79, urging Longmont citizens to vote yes on ballot question 2A regarding whether City of Longmont debt should be increased by an amount not to exceed $31,100,000 by the issuance of wastewater revenue bonds to finance wastewater system capital projects on the November 5, 2013 municipal election ballot. Item 9F is Resolution 2013-80, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and Boulder County for Sunset Street Corridor Study financing. Item 9G is Resolution 2013-81, approving intergovernmental agreement between the City and the State St. Vrain Valley School District RE1J, Boulder County, and Mental Health Partners for the Prevention Intervention Program Service Agreement. Item 9H is Resolution 2013-82, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and State of Colorado for professional development opportunities for City employees at Front Range Community College. Item 9I is a conditional letter of support to SkyTran Incorporated regarding proposed alternate transit options connecting Longmont, Boulder, and Firestone. And Mayor Coombs' staff would like to pull items C and D for a short presentation.
All right. Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'd also like to pull number I, 9I.
Councilmember Santos.
Unless anyone has any others. You? Okay. Then I would move the consent agenda minus items C, D, and I.
All right, let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
So, Mayor Coombs, the first item pulled was Resolution 2013-77 regarding the financing the fiber optic system capital improvements. And I believe Eugene May has a short presentation on the changes. Or were you going to start, Harold?
I think I'm going to start, and we might as well, we'll cover both C and D, I think, in this discussion. Mayor, Council, we wanted to go over the information one more time regarding broadband and what's before you tonight. Tonight is actually the culmination of something that really started in 1997 when the fiber optic backbone was put in place. Since then, we've had a private partner that later filed for bankruptcy, and then in 2005, municipalities, there was some legislation that limited municipalities' rights to provide the service. In 2011, the citizens of Longmont voted to reestablish and allow us to provide that service. And today, in 2013, we're putting something before our community to allow us to actually build the system and provide the service. There's been a lot of questions about the process that we've gone through as we've moved toward this date. Specifically, have we done our due diligence? I will say that we have gone through a tremendous amount of work and conducted a lengthy feasibility study. We feel that the feasibility study was very conservative. It was based on actual implementation at other municipalities, successful municipalities. We had surveys done that were statistically valid based on a market study, and ultimately what the analysis showed is that the revenues from the services will cover the costs within 11 years. One of the things that comes out is why is an electric utility in this service? I think what's important is the American Public Power Association did an analysis on operations. Why is an electric utility good for this? And I think it's because fiber and electricity follow very similar paths. One is moving electrons across a line, the other is moving data via light. And so we have an expertise within our system that really allows us to move in and be successful in this area. I was going to talk about the benefits, but I think there were a number of folks that really pretty much hit every talking point that I had today. So I won't go into it in detail, but I will say I think this is going to have a significant impact in terms of economic development, and we've seen that today based on folks that have contacted LPC for service and the questions that they're asking. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Vince Jordan, and he will provide you with some information, and then we'll be happy to answer. And then I think Eugene has to cover a couple of points, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mayor Combs, Mayor Pro Tem Santos, council members. As Harold said, a lot of our talking points were covered this evening by the folks that came up here. But a couple of things I want to hit on is, to date, about 135 municipalities across the country are providing fiber to the home and fiber to the business services. And then over 400 are providing successfully services in telecom, cable industry, and those sorts of things. So this is not new ground, new territory for a municipality. And as Harold said, we've looked at all the success cases as well as the failure cases too, to understand why towns like Provo and Salt Lake City and others have struggled and not done as well as the towns who have been succeeding. I think one of the other things that's very important for us, the city of Longmont and the staff has looked at, is this topic has become a national topic, as evidenced by the one of the items in your information packet, the article by USA Today. This is a very broad topic across the country right now. And even in the Front Range here, you may know that the town of Centennial is following Longmont. They're a couple of years behind, but they've just this week, the past week, council approved a ballot issue to overthrow SB 152 in the town of Centennial. So now we have a 2-year lead in the Front Range, but that may change here over a period of time. So we're really excited about what we've brought before you tonight. And just to give you a quick update, we've got 20 businesses that have been installed to date. In fact, we installed 4 on Main Street this week, and it's only Tuesday, so it's early in the week. Things have been working very well. We've got a few residents on, and we're looking at some more very small pilots that we can do for the residential community, just to continue to prove out the capability and grow the business as we can with the funding that we have. But it's going really well, and along with the folks here assembled tonight, we're excited to be at this point in history in Longmont with fiber optics.
Thank you, Vince.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. I'm going to turn it over to Assistant City Attorney Jeff Freeland. He's been taking the lead on the telecom matter and was the author, drafted the resolution, and it's going to go over some changes.
Mayor and Council, we just made basically one small change to the resolution that was handed out tonight. It's different from the one that was in your packet. And that was to make it consistent with the ordinance back in 2011, where we, the Senate Bill 152 ordinance, where we sort of overthrew that, so to speak, and we reestablished our right to provide telecom services. In 2011, the ballot question said that we could provide services to folks in the city and within the city service area. The resolution tonight, the first version, referred to residents and businesses, but in particular residents. And we wanted to make that consistent with the 2011 one. We didn't want anybody to think that residents meant we could not provide service to folks in the city service area. So with that in mind, we deleted the phrase to business and residents in a couple places. And perhaps that's out of an overabundance of caution, but we just wanted to make sure we made it consistent with the 2011 ordinance. Any questions on that?
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Anybody have any questions? No? Well, thank you.
Okay, yep.
Do you want to address I, Brian? Or should we deal with this one first?
Are we still dealing with C and D?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just C.
Yeah,
I have some comments in C and D if
Okay.
we're thinking about moving on.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. I guess I want to be perfectly clear on a few things. I made some comments last time, which might have given the impression that I was not behind the broadband. That's not what I was doing. My belief is, if you ask the tough questions, then you can address the brutal facts, you can resolve those concerns, and it will increase the chances that you will succeed. That's why I was asking the questions. So I am 110%, actually 100%. It bugs me when people say 110%, because you can't have more than 100%. But I'm 100% behind Resolution 2013-77 and Resolution 2013-78. I'm in support of it. As a matter of fact, I've got a quick question. We voted to put it to ballot. But my question, and we were talking about using a COP process to actually put up city buildings. That made me nervous. My question is it possible through a COP process to actually, rather than put up city buildings, put up the LPC revenues? And the reason I'm asking is I heard our fine friends from CenturyLink and can imagine some of the comments from our fine friends at Comcast, and I'm smiling because they're in the audience and I think highly of these individuals. But as I'm sitting here listening to the comments, we've done this once before, and my stomach turns. I don't want to do this again. So my question is that even an option, a COP with LPC revenues?
Go ahead and start, Jim, and then I'll.
Mayor Kumis, members of council, Jim Golden, Director of Finance. Offhand, I would say no, not in the full amount, because it's subject to annual appropriation, so all that you would be able to back it with is the revenues from the electric utility for that 1 year. And of course, not being able to show a lot of available or excess revenues from 1 year, I don't think that would get us very far with a $43 million debt. So again, the COP is subject to annual appropriation, so if the council decides not to appropriate, then the bond holder, the COP holder, has to have something it can take of value, and that's what the buildings are. They're going to be about $45 million worth of buildings to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Then that said, I'm still not willing to do the COP with the buildings. However, my point of view is that I think that a high fiber network, the broadband that we're talking about first, will be beneficial in attracting businesses to Longmont. It will be beneficial to our residents as they become more educated and their kids get educated. I think that just like our electric and power utility, it was successful. The same people that make that successful will be running that. And again, to all, not wanting to disrespect fine businesses like CenturyLink and Comcast, I, like many other of our 87,000 citizens, have spent time on the phone screaming at them saying, I don't know how, but someday, well, today's the day. And I'm frustrated with my internet access, and this is the solution. So next time when they're not very responsive, they can point to this and say, "God, maybe we should have fixed that problem because Longmont went out and fixed it for us." So I'm going to be voting yes on both C and D, and look forward to it.
You know, we fully kind of vetted this a couple weeks ago. And, you know, the one advantage of the bonds was the lower interest rates over the COP. And I think that's a significant reason, too, to support the bond issue over the COP. I also am going to support C&D. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that we substitute the resolution provided to us at our desk for Resolution 2013-77.
All right, let's vote on that. Catch. That passes 7-0. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. And I happily approve and move Resolution 2013-77.
All right, it's been moved to second. Let's vote. Alex. We're missing Alex's vote there. Okay, there it is. Okay, passes 7-0. Councilmember Santos.
And I'm trying to get to the right screen.
78.
78. This is 3 years coming for me. 2009. Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. 2009, council approved a resolution to urge residents to vote yes on a ballot initiative. It failed. 2011, another council, different council, voted to urge residents to vote yes on a ballot initiative. That one passed. This council is now asking residents to vote yes on another ballot initiative. Just a small reminder to the incumbent providers. This does not take away the city's right to provide services if this fails. This just puts, this puts it back. If this does not pass, we can still provide services. It'll just take longer to get there. But I would still encourage residents to vote yes on this. This is, as many residents have said, this is Longmont's future. I believe this. Councilmember Bagley, in his way, eloquently said, this is Longmont's future. So with that, I move resolution 2013-78. And I encourage residents to vote yes.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0. I would like to add that was very well stated, Councilmember Santos.
Mayor Coombs, your last, are you
Yeah,
ready?
go ahead.
Okay, your last consent agenda item is I, which is the conditional letter of support to SkyTran. And I believe-
And Councilmember Bagley, you pulled it, so.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. And this is one where I just want to share my thoughts because I don't want to feel guilty afterwards, thinking that I didn't say something. I've got a quiz for my fellow council members and members of the audience. Raise your hand if you have heard of the company VisiCalc. Okay, few. How about Osborne Computers? Okay. Newton. Okay. We'll get a little bit more. How about de Havilland? Okay. How about Diners Club International? Okay. And I'm stealing this from research that was done on a team that I did before, so all credit goes to Jim Collins. But the reason I ask this is I cannot think of one instance where first to market eventually won. That is my concern with SkyTran. I think very highly of the people involved. And so my concern is, in moving forward, it's not that I'm not behind it. My concern is that if private investment comes in and builds it, if, not when, but if it doesn't work, what's going to happen when we have, rusted out SkyTran from here to Boulder? So before I get behind it, I would like to see, and I know that the paper said this is great, I know it's backed by public investment, I would like to see a business plan. I'd like to see what happens if it doesn't work. I'd like to see queuing problems. And so before I vote, I'm behind it. I think it's a really cool idea, but I'm not ready to say, it'd be kind of like one of my students up at CU going, hey, guess what? I've got this really cool idea. But before I say, great, I want to see their business plan. I want to see that they've thought everything through. I want to see who's involved. I just have a lot of questions. So it's not that I'm against it. It's just that I've got concerns and would want to engage in more of I'd want to see people at the podium educating us on this before I actually say that I'm behind it. So I'm not going to be voting for it only for that reason, because I'm not there yet. I don't have the data. That's it.
Councilmember Witt.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I have heard quite a bit about SkyTran, and I've told folks involved that sounds great in theory, bleeding edge of technology, perhaps. But the way that the letter is written, it's no skin off our nose. Is it going to sully our reputation? I don't think so. I think it's just a letter saying, hey, if this all works, hey, we are looking for transportation options. We're looking at all transportation options, and this is a little bit outside. I think if it's supposed to work, it'll all come together. There's too many unknowns, too many variables that are up in the air. Literally. And I just think that I really don't think it's going to hurt, and perhaps it'll help. So that is my somewhat endorsement of the letter.
When I read the letter, it is it doesn't put the city at a high risk point of view. I think Brian made some excellent points about what if the infrastructure is left and degraded. But as far as a business plan goes, I think this is a starting point of a business plan, is getting community support. Then they can go out and get financing and look at a business plan. This isn't the end point or a validation of a business plan, so I look at it a little bit differently, though I really respect Brian's, Councilmember Bagley's opinion on this. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'll be supporting it. Councilmember Samori.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, all those companies that were listed by Councilmember Bagley may have failed, but the technologies that they created at one point help propel future technologies. They may not have been able to manage the companies themselves or make the companies profitable, but what they created is being used, and efficiencies and improvements have been made by other companies that followed. The way I look at Skytran is one of those innovative opportunities that was talked about earlier. They may or may not succeed. That's not for us to decide. All they're asking for us is support to do research on alternate mode of transportation. It's up to CDOT when they're negotiating their right-of-way to put contingencies in place that should they fail, this is what will happen. And if they succeed, then that's how much they're going to pay. It's pretty out there. It's elevated, but that's what we need to move into the future, so to speak. I'll be supporting it.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure we don't get, I understand Councilmember Bagley's position. I want to make sure we don't get too far out on what this letter actually entails. It just says that we're okay with the consideration of Skytran. Not that we're endorsing the project, not that we're saying we'll put seed money behind it or anything else, but saying, you know, fly high, not just on the ground. And that's, you know, depends on a lot of things. And but this is not a ringing endorsement of the technology or anything else. In my understanding, the letter simply says, as issues are being considered, here's another option for something that is not on the wheels on the ground. Is that correct?
All right, well, you pulled it. Councilmember Bagley?
One more, I don't know if we're allowed to ask them questions, but I guess I would look for this, you know, which is, at some point, could I get that information that I was talking about? That's it. And oftentimes I will be the devil's advocate. And the reason why I'm doing this is only because of what came out in the paper. And so my concern is that the paper was behind it. This letter will be reported in the paper that City Council approved the letter, and it will be misinterpreted. And so I just want to make sure that it's voiced that before Longmont is jumping into something, I just don't want the public to perceive this as being, you know, I'm fine with the letter. I just don't want the horse to get the, you know, the bit in its teeth and just run with it without some common sense. That's it. So you can just chalk me up for being the guy that's going to keep the bit. That's it. So I'm not going to move it. So because I'm not going to vote for it, but you guys go ahead.
Councilmember Witt.
Thanks. And let it be known that we are not paying for anything. No monies are being expended. We are just not being a hindrance, is what we are not being, is with this letter. And with that, I'll move 9I.
Oh, okay, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 6-1 with Councilmember Bagley dissenting. So let's take a break. Let's take a 10-minute break. so we don't have to extend it past 11 o'clock. We got a couple of big items in the business section. Yeah, okay, great.
Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead.
Mayor Coombs,
Could everyone take their seat, please?
slamming bar. Mayor Coombs, the next item on your agenda is general business, Human Service Agency funding recommendations.
So Valerie.
Yeah.
Valerie.
Okay, Karen, you've got the mic now.
Hang on a second, I'll get it.
You? What for Karen?
Are you ready?
Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, great. Mayor and City Council, my name is Karen Roney. I'm with the Community Services Department. And tonight we're back. You heard from me earlier this month to provide an update on where we were with the Human Service Agency funding assessment. And we are back here this evening to talk about what those recommendations are. And at some point there will be a slide presentation coming up. But so really tonight what we wanted to do is update council on a couple of things. So in particular that the one of the charges that council gave to staff last year was to really look comprehensively at the Human Service Agency funding process, and particularly to look at, can we be more effective or maybe purposeful in our public investments in human service agencies here in the Longmont community, and so that we are linking what we are investing in to the greatest needs in our community, and that hopefully that we have ways to begin to track in a better way what are the impacts of our investments on people's lives in the Longmont community. So since April, we've been working on that effort, and in essence, we've been working on a couple of major pieces. One is to look at here we are, sorry. Yeah, thank you. So, so basically, starting in April and through first part of June, we were gathering data. So what we did is we looked at information that already existed in terms of other data sets throughout the local community and the region and the state. I think we talked a little bit about this on when I was here early in August. And so what we did is we produced an environmental scan that contained a lot of that information about what are the needs and trends that either currently people are experiencing in Longmont or are forecasted. And all of this information is in the report that you did receive, and I can go into all kinds of detail if you wish, but I think I'll hold that for you to ask questions so that we can move forward. But so we identified a lot of the information and issues and trends, and then later on in the month, in June, we invited the community members to also give us their input about what their experiences are, either as a service provider, a community member, a volunteer, about the issues and needs in our community. So we held community conversations. We had about 135 people, and through that process, we had lots of sticky walls, we had half sheets, we had dots, and we engaged the community around what are the issues and needs, and what do you think are the highest priorities for the Longmont community, which will feed into the recommendations that we'll be going over this evening. The other major activity that we were involved in is looking at what are all the different approaches, and there are many approaches that are out there, but different ways to consider how we fund human service agencies in addition to the way that we have funded them for many years. And so there were three particular approaches that we invited the community to engage in a basically a policy dialogue with us around if we were to allocate funding differently, what would be some of the trade-offs for basically doing that in a different way, and those different ways were if we really just maybe focused on some of the big darn deals in Longmont and focused a lot of our money and efforts there to make a huge difference and have an impact in the community over time. Should we invest more funding into prevention? And I think a couple of people earlier mentioned here at the podium that, and it's something that we all know is if we invest early in children and in youth and help them to be successful, have a successful launch into adulthood, that we really can prevent a lot of negative things from happening in the future as adults. And then the third issue was really about there are some issues that seem to touch a lot of different areas, and so if we maybe also address some of those what we call cross-cutting issues, that having a safe and affordable home came up all the time. Making sure that people had access to health care, mental health care, those kinds of things came up with frequency as we looked at the various target areas. So should we maybe be focusing efforts on those cross-cutting needs that would make an impact? So we had a dialogue about that. We had lots of information. It's all in your report. So what the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board did at a couple of weeks ago was to take all of that data that we received from the scan, that we received from the community, and they worked to make some meaning out of that data that is in the form of the recommendations that that I'm here to talk about with you this evening. So the recommendations, or at least the 5 areas that we discussed in terms of where we would target funding would be in the areas of preparing children and youth for success, increasing self-reliance for adults, meeting the basic needs of residents, building a safer community, and improving access to services. So we looked at all of the data that we collected in regard to those, and we created a priority matrix. And so as you read in your communication, there were lots of data sets that we looked at, and what we started to do was to look at all the various data sets, whether that was the community conversations, whether those were interviews that we did with agency directors. We also took a look at the preliminary data from the Longmont Community Foundation and their BEBL, Build a Better Longmont survey. And then also what we got out of the community conversations, and we started to basically place dots across the areas where those things and those issues and concerns showed up in the most amount of data sets. And then from that, we basically sorted those into tiers, priority tiers, one being the highest, which meant it got the highest number of mentions in all those various data sets, and so forth. And then the advisory board then looked at all of the data from the deliberative dialogues in terms of the trade-offs of those different approaches, and came up with the funding approach that is in your packet. So what the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board is recommending that number one, that we would continue to set aside money for the Poverty Reduction Initiative. Next year we will be year 4 of that 5-year pilot, and so the recommendation is to continue to set aside money for that so we can complete that effort and report back to the council on that. And then their recommendation next was to take 80% of the remaining funding and to allocate that to, there are 2 tier 3 areas, and those were helping children and youth be successful and meeting the basic needs of our community. So again, that was the recommendation. Those were the highest priorities. they hit a lot of important needs in the community, and so 80% of the money should be allocated for Tier 1. Then the remainder would be, the 20% remaining would be allocated toward the Tier 2 services, and those services involved with helping adults in our community to be self-reliant. And then there was one of the Tier 3 recommendations was for building a safer community, and the recommendation would be is that since it is a Tier 3, that depending on the amount of funding that is available over 2013, that the increment amount of funding would go toward the Tier 3 area. And so I talked a little bit about the why. So we talked a little bit about the RISE pilot. In terms of the Tier 1 target areas, what the advisory board believed is that, and what they heard from the community conversations is that that there was value in doing some of these other approaches, prevention, for example. But one of the things that the community said, please, please, please do not jeopardize the safety net. It's important that if we're trying to prevent something in the long term, that we don't forget about the people who have needs right now. So from the advisory board's perspective, if we funded those 2 Tier 1s at 80%, we basically preserve the safety net in terms of the basic needs for residents, and then we also look at the longer term for how we are going to invest in children and youth, so that some of the bad things that maybe we're experiencing now, we might be able to eradicate or really have a significant impact on in the future. The other note that the advisory board made is that also in Tier 1, there are some pretty significant issues. So we find housing, we find homelessness, we find mental health and health care. So some of those large issues that impact a lot of people in our community are also found in that Tier 1 area. So by funding a large percentage or allocating a large percentage of the funds in the 2 Tier 1 areas, we are have the opportunity to address a lot of those significant needs. The other thing that we heard is, and really we heard it from the agencies, is that it is important that we continue to promote and support ways that that agencies collaborate with each other and coordinate services. And what the advisory board, thought is certainly, we asked for that and we try to assess that through the application process, but it probably would be something that we would look at, how we help to support that in maybe a more effective way than we do now. That came from the agencies. In fact, a couple of agencies said, we think maybe you should put some money toward just, collaboration. That's not what is recommended, but it's certainly, we heard pretty clearly that it's important to help support and make sure that collaboration is happening across agencies to address some of these important issues in our community. There was a 5th target area, which is access to services, and it ended up being a Tier 3, had like the lowest number of priority votes, and the advisory board said, this might be something that it's not something that our funding should go towards specifically, but maybe the city could have a facilitative role in making sure that if there are barriers to access to service, that we work more specifically with those agencies or the government to really address some of those barriers, and that didn't necessarily need to be something that was funded as a service through the Human Service Agency process. The advisory board felt like their recommendations do reflect some choice making. I mean, one of the things that council did talk about is we can continue to try to be all things to all people, but that is very difficult to do, and that isn't something that we can do as a city. And so I believe that you asked the advisory board to look at making some choices, and they feel like they took a pretty good run at doing that based on the data that they were able to collect and the input from the community. And and they also believe that that the proposal does align some of the city's funding with some of the most significant needs that we were able to uncover and reaffirm through that needs assessment process earlier this summer. So this is generally what this looks like, and we're going to hear. This is a little bit before the budget message, but anyhow, right now this is based on the same formula for allocating money for human service agencies in 2014, that 1.6%. And so if we apply the recommendations to that 1.6%, what you see in front of you is that we would look at setting aside about $190,000 for the pilot for the RISE program, and that is an increase from 2013. Get my year straight. Is that this in this year we will be pulling out the money for case management for the Longmont Housing Authority Case Management Services, that funding will also come out of the Human Service Agency set aside. In the past 3 years, that's really come out of the general fund on a one-time basis. So in trying to address some of the other issues that we're addressing in the general fund, we moved all those expenses for the RISE program to the Human Service Agency set aside. So that's why that's a little higher than what you had seen in the past. And 80% of what we think what would be remaining is around $650,000 that would go toward the Tier 1 services, and you can see $163,000 for Tier 2, and the increment for Tier 3, which is basically addressing safe community issues, would be around a little over $25,000. Based on what we're projecting, that 1.6%.
Councilmember Santos?
I have a quick question. The 25,000 in Tier 3, are any of those new services? New programs?
So Council Member Santos and Mayor Coombs, so we have not released any applications yet. So
just an overall increase in the 1.6.
Right, that's how much would be available for, and I think, generally it would be for some existing services. At this point, we aren't limiting who can apply for services, so it could be for new service. This is not an area that we have funded in the past. And so, but it came up as a high priority in our conversations around, particularly, there's, maybe I'll just move forward a little bit. So if I look at Tier 3, so addressing interpersonal violence, that is something that we have funded, in the past. The safe and connected neighborhoods, that was a new area, and that doesn't necessarily mean, Council Member Santos, that we would fund that out of this Human Service Agency set aside, because we do have neighborhood activities that support it through our general fund and our neighborhood programs. But it did come up as something that was important. Doesn't mean that it automatically would get funded here.
I understand. Thank you.
So you have this information in your packet in terms of what all the services would come under that, how much money would be allocated at this point. And as I mentioned, it's based on the 1.6% set aside. The amounts that we came up with would, again, we would take the base level funding we have for 2013, which is $1,004,000 and some change. That's where the set aside for the RISE program, for the Tier 1 and Tier 2 services, and the Tier 3 would be that increment in terms of what would be new money generated in 2014. So what would happen is tonight, if we get direction from council and say, this looks like a good plan, or we want you to change up the plan, and you give us direction around that, then what we will do is that we will go to work to finish out the remainder of the application. And then we would plan to release that application the end of September, first part of October. And as council recalls, this is a new online grant application process in conjunction with the City of Boulder and Boulder County. And so we're all launching together. So that's, I'm sure some of them wish we would hurry up because they're waiting for us, but we're all sticking together and we're all launching it at the same time. And one of the things that we are looking at doing differently, the three funding entities from the government here in Boulder County, is that whereas in the past we in our application we say, okay, so we will consider applications for agencies that provide services in these areas. Those agencies would tell us how they plan to use those funds to meet that particular need. And what we are looking at this year is that we will be more prescriptive in terms of what we want to see happen. So the outcomes that we are looking for, the indicators that we want the agencies to address and that their services will address, and then with our new grant application system and our ability to generate reports, then we will be able to more collectively be able to look at how the investments in some of these areas, possibly from the three entities, how much we invested, what really happened, and how did we accomplish some of the indicators. So we are really excited about the opportunity to be able to do this, and we really appreciate the partnerships with our two other governmental entities. And I also want to let you know that United Way is back. They're in the conversations with us, so I think they might have they're in conversations with us, and might be interested in coming back into the the fold for those four funders, but they have to decide that. They have a couple of years to do that. And the last thing I want to do, and then obviously just to open it up for comments, questions, is that I do want to recognize all the different people in the city of Longmont that really helped to pull this together. We were on a fast track for 4 months. The lead people that worked with me and the advisory board were so John Clark, Kathy Fedler, and Michelle Waite, all with the Community Services Department. So they really helped to gather data and to really run those community involvement processes. And we had our admin support staff in terms of Sally Rainey and Virginia Jones had to figure out how they're going to make sense of all the data we threw at them. We had an intern from Drake University. Her name was Hannah Graffelman, and she got a crash course in government community involvement, and she said it was a good experience for her. And I'm going to believe her. And then we had staff facilitators that helped us with the community conversations and with the deliberative dialogues, and they are listed there. And what I think is pretty remarkable is that we had almost every department in the city represented in helping us with the dialogues. And it is not, I think it's a special thing that we can do a call out to other departments and we get 20 staff members showing up and say, yeah, we will help you with the deliberative dialogue. We will help you out of these are busy folks, and they made time and they made room for one more thing on their plate to really help out the community and help us out. So hats off to all of our staff members who in the last 4 months really helped to pull this together and to bring these recommendations forward, and to the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board, and they're just getting started. So they get to learn a new application system, and they're going to have to figure out, how to take this approach and whatever modifications that you make, and make some decisions and bring those back to council at the end of December, first part of January. So I am here to answer questions that you might have and take other direction.
Councilmember Witt.
Thank you, Mayor. Karen, I just think that the way that it was orchestrated and the amount of work that went into this, I support the methodology. It is never easy when you have limited resources and unlimited wants and needs in order to, how do we fairly and effectively use what we have to the highest good. And I think that this somewhat mirrors what we're trying to do with the rest of our budget and prioritize and try to make sure that the most important things get taken care of first. And I know that folks have come in advocating specifically for one program or another, and I'm not going to get into that. All I'll say is I support the methodology and I support the way that you've structured how to make those decisions. So, and appreciate all the work that was put into this.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'm still having voter's remorse over SkyTran, but I'll get over it. Thanks. Hold my hand, Councilmember Levison. Thank you. In all seriousness, I'm the liaison to this particular board, and I had the opportunity last year to sit in on the interviews. And what struck me was, how much power this board had in determining what happens with basically $1 million. And I thought that it was, one of the concerns I had was all the money's going to good organizations, but I felt that it was a little bit undisciplined. Over the last year, I've observed the board and Karen and Kathy, and saw how they've wrestled with the methodology. And I look at these target areas, and I feel very comfortable after having observed the amount of work and effort and time that went into this, then also seeing, the recommendations of meeting the basic needs of residents, preparing children and youth for success, and then to a lesser degree, increasing self-reliance for adults. Those are some very specific targets that not only provide guidance to the board, but also council. But I also happen to think, after your interaction with the community and the discussions that I've seen you and the board have with each other and the community and other service-based organizations, I think it's spot on. And I think that once we've all had the opportunity to have our say and whatnot, I think we should approve the HHSAB recommendation for priority areas. And so I'll be making that recommendation if somebody else doesn't.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, this was a long and very intense process, so I applaud everyone's fortitude. And I also know that there are many members of the public and executive directors of nonprofits who spent quite a bit of time themselves invested in this. And I think that having everybody in the room was a good thing to do, because the EDs got to see everybody else at one time. My understanding, many of them were around the table all at once. I also had an opportunity to listen to some of the public comments that the open session, response session that was held at the library a couple of weeks ago, and found very interesting mix of people providing services and people that have received services. I, for one, and I know that the report had an item around, going deep into an issue, and I saw that I'm trying to get to the right page, but what was talked about was, do we go broad or do we go deep? And in some ways, we do strike a balance, because the RISE program does go deeper. And I think that the work we're doing in that pilot project or program does tell us, actually, nuts and bolts, how much money does it take to support a family with young children. And I think that that was information that may help further inform our process. Frankly, I know that the idea of going deep and trying to solve, pick a couple of problems, to see if we can't make headway on them would be difficult to communicate to the public. However, with the numbers that were presented, that Longmont is becoming poorer and the gaps between rich and poor becoming greater, are we at a risk of our community being looked at as one that's very bipolar? And that's not a great image for our community. I'd rather have a lot more people clumped in the middle and not just have these huge gulfs of disparity. I would be interested to see whether or not we can really get some, without overburdening the nonprofits, get some good data around when you invest money, what the outcomes are. I had a couple of specific questions regarding the preparing children and youth for success. I know we've seen in different parts of the budget, support for Head Start comes in transportation sometimes. We provide bus transportation. We provide this, that, the other thing. Are all those funds for every agency that provides child care service going to come out of this Tier 1 budget? We're not going to see things scattered any longer.
Councilmember Levison and Mayor, yes, that is correct. And so the other thing is that I didn't mention is that we automatically in the past also had a set aside for the child care certificate program, and that is going to go through the competitive process. So,
and I guess how are we going to? The one thing that really does not speak to it is, the affordable and safe housing. That to me, as we've seen from the Workforce Housing Task Force, we could spend $2 million a year just providing housing or building housing and maintaining it. How can what we have set aside this budget even begin to address the housing situation?
So the, so I think to talk about the housing, that most of our conversations is around not necessarily the capital construction for housing, because that really comes out of other sources, our CDBG, our home and affordable housing funds. But this really would be for supportive services that are necessary for folks who are, either in shelter, transitional housing, housing first. So this would really help to fund more of those supportive services, as well as some of the operational support for such as the in-between. But this would not be for construction of or rehab of affordable units. That comes out of the other sources of funding.
But I think that the perception of the people that were in the workshops was that housing was very important, and from the data, and so I don't want to make sure we're not misleading people to think that we're not actually going to be doing any real housing.
Not through this source of funding, right? Right.
Okay.
And we'll continue to try to, because we have different sources, so we'll try to continue to help our community understand that. And and certainly the agencies, when they were talking to us, is that they're not to be discouraged. There's not enough money on this green earth to take care of a lot of these issues. So a lot of them are systemic issues. A lot of them have to do with federal government policy, all kinds of things. And so I think what we're trying to focus on, what can we truly affect locally, and that's what we're really trying to focus on. We can't eradicate.
Well, and when we're talking about basic needs and safety net, one of the things that I saw brought up just a couple of times in the big report was the idea of the cliff effect, where even accepting a 25-cent an hour raise would put you above whatever line the federal government has drawn as the line where you lose all these supported services. So when you're talking about the safety net, are we talking about the people that are how do we balance the people that are getting those basic services as part of that support network, and then the cliff effect? Because to me, the greatest need is at that fuzzy edge where someone, because of all the services they will lose if they make more money, purposely don't move themselves forward in the economic community because it costs them more money and costs their family greater damage not to be more economically productive. So therefore, it doesn't matter how much money we put into the self-reliance for adults, because a lot of people, in order to maximize the way their family lives, the standard of living will be worse if they earn. There's a disincentive to earn more money and to become more self-reliant in that fuzzy region between government support and full self-sufficiency. So I would like to make sure that our safety net is actually focused on those people who need that little bit of support as they're getting to that self-reliant, the economic level of self-reliance. And I'm just going to make one last plug for a book that's made a huge amount of splashes in the federal and state public policy realm, called Creating an Opportunity Society, by the Brookings Institute fellows Isabel Sawhill and Ron Haskins. And they've done a lot of data study and a lot of analysis, and there are 3 things that they've actually come up with the proof that to ensure that you're at least, that you are never in poverty. 75% of the time you do these 3 things and you will not be poor. Graduated from high school and get a GED, have a full-time job with benefits, and delay childbirth until marriage. And those 3 things, and Ron Haskins was recently one of the 3 finalists for the conservative chair at University of Colorado. So I know people in this state know of his work and his conservative attitude to promoting government policies that are actually going to pay off for sustaining society. So I would support, I want to see how this works out, but in principle, I support the way the tiers are set up. And I'd also like to make sure that the progress and the data we've received from the RISE program helps us learn what effectiveness we have when we invest money in families.
I'm going to weigh in here. First off, thanks to everybody that worked so hard. It was a great team effort. A lot of smart people obviously worked on this. I think it's interesting that you can tie, service area to, like, for instance, preparing children and youth for success, which is a tier 1. But the parents' education and involvement is actually a service area that's related to that. And I think it was Kat Bennett made that connection that, educating the adults does have a benefit for the kids. And I think that the people that put this together realized that and captured those things that aren't direct but more of an indirect thing. So thanks for doing such a great job for that. I think Brian Bagley was well stated, and I'm going to also support the recommended option on this. So that, Councilmember Samori.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Just some clarification. As we were going through the presentation and the way things were tiered, I was surprised to see that food was on tier 3. Is that because there are other agencies providing those services, or not as big of a priority?
So I think it was I just have too much data here. But I think that was Councilmember Samori. So it was a
if you go
tier
back on
3
your slide,
service
right,
under meeting the basic needs.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say that it is important. And it certainly came up in the conversations, but we looked at how it trended with the other needs. That it's probably easier for folks to get access to food sources than some of the other services. these are all important, but yeah, it didn't show up as much in, you know, in our data sets.
So the other thing that I noticed in the report is showed that Longmont has the largest population of uninsured. How are we going to be able to help these people when the requirements, the new requirements in 2014 go into effect?
Councilmember Samori and Mayor and council members, that's really a great question for which I don't have a whole lot of answers for, but so how about that? So certainly we know it's a need. I would say that we will continue to watch what the impacts will be. When we talk about healthcare, it's a broad range, so it's not just medical care, so it's also dental care, it is mental health and substance abuse. So we will continue to follow the trending as it relates to the Affordable Care Act and what kind of impact that has on for families, and what does that do to influence how we invest this money.
Okay. Thank you. Great job, by the way.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I also really enjoyed the report. I like the way that you went about combing through all the data and getting the information. And I, given my limited voice, would just like to say that I would move that we accept your recommendations.
I'll second it.
I seconded it.
Oh.
He's got a microphone. I seconded it first.
Okay, Brian seconded it for the record. I'll give him credit. Councilmember Levison.
Actually, I would like to respond to Councilmember Samori's query around the healthcare issues. Even though we didn't submit a team to go down to Denver for another grant opportunity through National League of Cities around how cities are helping with access to healthcare, because of my connection with the Youth Education and Family Council, I went down just to learn about what other cities were doing and what the proposals were going to look like from across the country. And there are, and I can share this information with you offline, but there are several cities that are jumping into a funding opportunity through some foundation work in NLC. A couple of the key areas especially is that cities can just help by getting as many people that are eligible for Medicaid, signed up for Medicaid, and also the Child Health Insurance Plus program. Apparently asking one basic question on a form, whether they're signing up for school or some youth program that the city offers, just asking, does this child have health care? Can start a conversation where somebody who has a child that's eligible for those services have not accessed them. So that's a very important new area that some cities are working in. Also, cities can help their citizens by funding some I don't know if the proper term is the health navigator, but there is a term of art, which I don't have memorized yet, that have people go out into the community and help people figure out getting a health insurance plan or signing up. And some cities will probably decide to do small amounts of funding to do that. And there is some restriction apparently in the new law that if you're selling insurance, you can't fill both roles of telling people, advising them, or showing them all the options. But I just want to let you know there is some corporate funding out there, and maybe if there's a second round of these grants, if you're interested and other council members are, maybe we should put a team together and see if we can't get some technical assistance and cash funding to implement the access to health care.
Okay, let's vote. Passes 7-0.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I am glad Councilmember Levison mentioned is that I do want to thank the agencies because they did fully participate. They fully participated in the conversations, and I know it's really hard because their job is to advocate for their agency and their need, they really did engage in that broader conversation about what's important for the community. So we really do appreciate their participation. Thank you very much. We will get to work.
Thank you.
Mayor Coombs, the last item on your agenda tonight is presentation of the 2014 proposed budget and 2014-18 proposed capital improvement program, and Harold Dominguez will present that.
Mayor and Council, tonight's when we actually just provide you with a budget, and we're going to go over some brief points. But what I wanted to say before we start out is that when you look at what we've had going on the last few months, it has been a time period where this organization has done a tremendous amount of work, and I really want to commend everyone. During the process, as we're moving through the budget, we also were making a conversion to Microsoft Outlook. We have the HATS project getting started. Karen and her group are working on the information that you just heard. And at the same time, we were going through a Parks Master Plan study. Those are significant projects for any organization, but when you put all of those projects on at one time and you add a budget to it, the work that staff has done over the last few months has been monumental. I want to especially commend Teresa and Jim. Their lives have been chaotic because those two are intimately involved in the HATS process as well. And so a lot of great work has gone into preparing the budget for you today. As we move through the process, I will say that it was really amazing for me going through the budget reviews to see what people put together. You'll see in the presentation that there were some positions added, but what you also saw was repurposing. People were looking at how they could repurpose funds to accomplish certain items, and so I thought that was really good. Tonight, I'm going to try something new, a different software. I wanted to pick a nice calming picture as we started the budget process, and so that's why I've done this. This is something that some staff are starting to use, and I figured I need to figure out how to use this and learn it. So this is my first attempt at Prezi, so if I mess up, I apologize. So who knows where this is going to go. When we talk, as we start our... So, well, wait till I mess it up, and then you'll go, what are you doing? As we start off with the budget, one of the things I like to talk about is what's the budget environment, and I'll give a broader overview in this. I think one of the things that as municipalities and government in general, historically we haven't really focused a lot on the environment and what that means for us, and that's something that I've seen in the other communities I worked in. What you see a lot of times when you look at private entities, they have to respond to the environment, because if they don't, they're going to have bigger issues. And so we've been talking about that. So what are the environmental conditions? Obviously, we're still dealing with the impacts of the economic downturn. While we are starting to do better as an organization, we're not completely out of this. Our sales and use tax is responding better. And as you've seen from the reports that Jim has been sending you all, we're doing well. Our property tax did not rebound. Essentially, it was pretty much a flat increase as we're moving forward, flat to slight increase in this. And if you talk to folks who got their appraisals, some said they were up, some said they were down. So, I mean, that's a good indication of what we were seeing. The overall revenue picture that we were dealing with in this budget process has really forced us to continue looking strategically at how we allocate our funds based on scarce resources. One of the things that happened this year is, and I'll get into the numbers in more detail, is that when you look at healthcare, pension plans, workers' compensation, liability insurance, they took a significant bite out of the new revenue that we had coming into this budget cycle. In addition, we're continuing to talk about the reset challenges because, as council knows from previous discussions, we're already engaged in that process. The allocation of the sales and use tax is something that we have to consider as we continue moving forward. In this budget cycle, that amounts to about $1 million that we moved out of the Public Improvement Fund and moved into the general fund. What we really want to be cautious of as we continue moving forward with the budget is what that means is that really means that there's less funds available in terms of putting it back into our infrastructure. So we have to be really careful because if we continue that too far for a longer period of time, what we really start seeing ourselves, what really happens is we get behind the curve in maintaining that infrastructure. We also talked last budget year about funding of ongoing operations with one-time dollars. When we started this process, that number was about $600,000. During the budget work we did last year, we reduced it to about $198,000. Going through the review in this budget process, we identified some more projects that actually needed to be included in it. They were termed pilot projects in the budget, and they really fit the definition. So that number went from 198 to 296. And as I indicated in some other discussions with council, part of this reset doesn't necessarily mean that numbers are always going to go down. It also means that we may have numbers go up, but what we're really doing is getting an accurate look at what we're having to deal with. And then finally, the Parks and Greenway maintenance fee of $455,000. That was in the budget message last year, and those are the major components of the budget reset that we've talked about. Some budget highlights. Despite an overall increase in this budget, we actually reduced the budget. We had another $353,000 in line item reduction. The general fund is balanced with $66.7 million, which is 0.8% below the adopted budget in 2013, or $533,000. This includes capital dollars, and so what you're really seeing in that reduction is in last year's budget, we had a lot of funds plugged in for technology advancements, specifically the HATS program, and so that's not included in this budget, so that's what's really showing the reduction. But when you look at the ongoing expenses in 2014, you can see that it is $64.4 million, which is up from 2013 at 62.8, and the majority of those dollars actually is related to the items that I listed in the first slide. It's all of those items, and then the salary increases associated with the fire and police agreements, and then just general salary increases to the organization. So as you can see by that number, while we had a revenue increase, there were those must-pay bills that really grabbed the majority of those funds. In addition, we know that we are moving the dollars from the Public Improvement Fund to the general fund to help us get through the economic position that we're in. We also had enough one-time funds available, so we could move. We're proposing to transfer $500,000 from the general fund to the Public Improvement Fund to make up some of that shift in funds. The reason why this makes sense is because the expenses in the Public Improvement Fund are one time, and so it's not like we're putting more ongoing expenses in there. In addition, we're proposing to push another $500,000 to the reserve balance, which brings it to $7.1 million. In addition, probably one of the biggest changes that you're going to see in this budget, and I previewed this with staff via a live presentation last week, and we had a conversation about some work that we're doing, so we're actually using this technology to really benefit us as an organization. But we were getting some feedback about some nerves increasing, so we decided to do this. What we're recommending in this budget is a salary increase, the traditional market increases to those positions that are below the midpoint. But because we didn't have ample ongoing funds in this budget, we're looking at proposing a one-time lump sum increase for those that are above the midpoint. If we were to look at something with ongoing funds, we probably weren't going to be able to have much of an increase, if any. And the other thing that we're watching in this is in this budget, there are also proposed increases in pension funds, health insurance, and so we needed to be cognizant of that. And you can see from the first slide, that was one of those items. So when it increases for us, it also increases for everyone that works in the organization. As we look beyond this budget cycle, and this is one of the things that I would like council to think about as we're moving forward, the ability to fund adequate service levels will continue to be a concern for us. As we talk about the reset, as we're approaching it and as we're trying to get a handle on it, until we do, that's going to be an issue that we're going to have to stay focused on as an organization. The uncertainties that exist at all levels of government and nationally and internationally are still significant. I think the one thing that we learned from this last economic downturn is that it was a fundamental shift for government. Typically, as we went through recessions, you would see cities move through them. We would come out of the recession, and our funding pattern would look similar to the way it did before. This recession's not acting like that. We actually are coming out of it, but it's looking flat, and so it is creating other issues for us to consider. Council, recently, the desired results exercise that you went through recently was one of the first steps in the priority-based budgeting process that we're beginning, and so they're putting that together. As a result of one of the items that council dealt with a few meetings ago, specifically the park maintenance fee of $450,000, we have dealt with that in this budget process, and so the budget reset gap is reduced from $3 million to $2.5 million. So we are making progress on that as we move forward. And then finally, staff's going to begin the next steps of the budget reset in the fourth quarter of this year. So as we're moving through this budget, we're going to be taking feedback from council, and then when we're finished, we're actually going to go into putting the data together to utilize the software that we demonstrated to council during the strategic planning session this summer. So a lot of work still to go, and we have a lot of in-depth presentations that will occur over the next month, but these are some of the highlights of the budget, and I wanted to provide them to you tonight and answer any broad questions today, because if they're too specific, what you will hear is we're going to get to that presentation. So I will say on the 3rd, we're going to go over more in depth the salary increases, and we're going to go over, I believe, health care and those types of items, but then we're going to have a discussion on the parks funding, because that is a major issue for us in this budget. I will tell you, as we have worked that conversation, what we are trying to do as staff is, instead of working and looking here, we're trying to look out at the tip of our fingers and look out over time and try to take a 20, 30-year perspective as we move forward on that. So that is what you will see next week. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Can I get a copy of what you just showed us?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
I'll send it to you in Adobe, because I don't know how this transfers.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I've got some specific questions. So number 4 on this slide. So what is that, in layman's terms, what does that budget reset gap of $2.5 million moving into the future mean? What does that $2.5 million represent?
That $2.5 million represents that we have got to come up with that either additional revenue or reduction in expenses to really put ourselves as an organization where we feel like we're where we need to be.
Is that an annual thing?
Well, what do you mean by annual?
What I'm saying is that $2.5 million, is that, where's that coming from? Is that like every year we need to come up with that much?
Yes, and we will have to come up with those adjustments in the ongoing budget. So yes, it will result into an annual reduction. You can't use one-time funds to come up with this number.
So what I'm saying is that $2.5 million, I guess what I'm saying is there's not a budget deficit right now.
It's not a deficit.
So what I'm saying is
not in a deficit.
If it's not a deficit, I guess I'm still not clear on what's that $2.5 million. If it's not,
we're putting $1 million. There's $1 million transferred from the Public Improvement Fund to the General Fund.
Right.
So of that $2.5 million, that's $1 million. And so traditionally that was in the Public Improvement Fund, and we were using it for capital projects.
So the $2.5 million isn't an annual thing. It's a lump sum thing. It's a one-time, we've got to come up with $2.5 million?
In the ongoing budget. And then it carries forward.
So it's not every year it's $2.5 million. There's a gap in every year. If you add up the future years, it's $2.5 million.
No.
And I still not understand it.
The source of the gap is $1 million that's moving from today, from the Public Improvement Fund to the General Fund for ongoing expenses.
Okay.
That is taking away from capital funding that we used to have that plug in to capital funding. That was a shift that was made during the height of the economic downturn. We have ongoing expenses that are funded with one-time dollars.
Understood. So it's one-time dollars that we're using to plug the hole.
Yes.
Understood.
And so we've got to find ongoing dollars.
Understood.
Take
Can we
care
go
of
back slide by slide? Okay, so you just said that you transferred $1 million, but then we transferred 500,000 back.
Correct, because we had 500,000 in one-time funds available.
Gotcha. Okay, and so that was put into the
Public
reserve.
improvement fund. So the way it looks at the end of the day is you're transferring $1 million from the public improvement fund to the general fund to cover those ongoing expenses.
Right.
But the public improvement fund is really only realizing a $500,000 reduction because of the transfer in this year. Now that may or may not happen every year.
Okay.
You know, if we don't have the one-time funds available, so for example, we didn't have the one-time funds available this year, and we can't make the transfer, then the public improvement fund realizes the full $1 million transfer.
Right. And then the 500,000 that was put into the reserve balance.
That's one-time funds.
Those are one-time funds, but that's still a rainy day reserve fund, right?
Correct. It's the restrictions on what we can use that for are very tight.
Right. So if it's a $2.5 million gap.
These are one-time funds.
Right. Why is it 2.5 if we put 500,000 into savings?
Because that's 2.5 of ongoing expenses.
Okay.
This is 500,000 of one-time funds.
Okay. So understood. Okay. Next. And there was one more question. It was, and then that number 2, 600,000 reduced to, so that 600,000 is ongoing operations. So you're saying that we basically saved that those are ongoing costs that you were able to reduce from 600,000 to 198.8.
We didn't reduce it. We funded them with ongoing funds in the last budget process instead of funding them with one-time funds.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I want a copy too, Bonnie. Sorry.
Councilmember Levison.
I'll just get copies to all the council members.
Thank you. One thing that has always been a frustration of mine is that it seems that many years past, and I think Gabe will be remembering this, that staff would pick out things they wanted to talk to about in the budget, and then it just didn't leave council members any time to say, well, I want to talk about that thing in the budget. So I'm hoping that we have a more open process this time. I haven't seen the budget yet, but I'm imagining that you have a schedule for what we're doing every week. And so we're going to take that section. And so if council members or the general public have any questions about that section of the budget, the conversation is not just going to be driven by staff this time, I'm hoping.
We have a general outline, but if council has any questions or something specific that they want to talk about, I would ask that you contact Jim or myself, and
Okay.
we will make sure that we can discuss those issues. If there's any questions, specific questions that we can answer, call us and ask us, and we will try to go over that information with you.
Okay. And I guess a lot of my past frustrations were when I looked at the CIP and what was funded, partially funded, whatever, it didn't seem to meet with priorities that I knew were out there in the community for funding. And so I, always wanted to ask to have things moved to partially funding or have an explanation why there are critical needs there that no one ever talked about. So just want to make sure that we have the ability for the general public to come in also and say XYZ in the CIP we feel is more important to be funded at least partially in the cycle as opposed to what the staff recommendation is on the CIP is only a staff recommendation.
Okay.
Not set in stone is my opinion.
Right, and I will tell you, we've had some conversations, for example, park renewal issues. Big discussions this year in that CIP component in the public improvement fund. Buildings that we may not have been, that we need to fund in terms of mechanical replacements. And so, but we can definitely have that conversation.
Great. I just want to make sure the general public knows this is the time for them to weigh in.
Absolutely. And I will say, the faster we can get this information, the better. Jim, did I miss anything? Sure.
Thank you, Harold.
I wanted him to tap me on the shoulder if I said something really off the wall in this, but no, please let us know, and we're available at any time to answer any questions. Our doors are open, and the sooner the better.
Okay, next is final call, public invited to be heard. Is there anybody who would like to speak to the council at this point? Please come down and state your name and address for the record.
Mayor Coombs and council members, I'm Bob Norris. I live at 532 Ryder Ridge Drive here in Longmont. And I know Strider had said a few words before I showed up at a conference call. But I think we do have to recognize that this is the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. And while that has led to a lot of changes, there's many in the communities of color that don't feel that there's been enough changes. People are discriminated against. There's huge gaps in almost any measure in terms of graduation, pay, and health. And so I think this is something we all should be aware of, and I know the council can't solve all those problems, but I think the community needs to be aware that we have still a long ways to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening, Mayor Coombs and members of City Council. I missed my opportunity earlier, so I'm here now. My name is Sherry Malloy. I live at 2113 Rangeview Lane here in Longmont. I attended both community input forums as a community member regarding the human services funding recommendations. First, I want to say kudos to Ken Roney and the other staff for organizing these forums and demonstrating excellent facilitation at these meetings. I'm very concerned about the increasing level of needs in our community in so many areas. As the report clearly shows, a lot of people in our city are hurting. As you know, we currently spend 1.6% of our general fund of $60 million to help support 30-some-odd nonprofits, providing a plethora of very necessary essential services. The recommendation from the Housing and Human Services Board is to keep this current level of funding. What baffles me is why there does not appear to be any discussion about increasing revenue. When the need increases, the response of a caring community should be to include in the conversation how we might ramp up rather than just revamp. I understand there is not much political appetite for raising revenue, with the assumption that people just hate paying taxes. This may be true generally, but Longmont is a community where people care about each other, a place where we believe we all do better when we all do better. Indeed, the voters in Longmont proved we step up with the recently passed mill levy. If the community is made aware of the growing needs of our neighbors, we will step up again. Please expand the conversation to give us the opportunity to do right by one another. People are hurting in our community. If we can give $28 million to mall vendors and developers, surely we can look at ways to increase and improve help for those who need our assistance. The beautiful logo behind you says, "You belong in Longmont." Let's prove it by demonstrating the political courage it takes to allow us collectively to ramp up rather than just revamp. Both can and should be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the audience who would like to come forward at this time?
Thank you. Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. I would like to strongly second what Shirley just said. I mean, Sherry, sorry. I was, We have had a propaganda machine running this country ever since the 1950s called neoliberal economics, and there's been a hardcore political move to erase the 20th century and abolish the New Deal. We need to take a look at what actually occurred, because the last time they pulled the financing out of the economy and collapsed the economy, the only thing that saved us from going either fascist or communist was the New Deal. And those who are wanting to continue that process of what they call deregulation are leading towards that same catastrophe that took place in the 1930s. Picking up on what Bob brought up, the March on Washington, I would like to point out the civil rights movement was the pathway of democratization that led to the women's liberation movement and all kinds of social advancement and democratic advancement. And I'd like to mention some of the women who should have spoken 50 years ago, who were there to speak, but who were prevented because that had not gotten on the agenda of the minds of the people who were in charge yet. Ella Baker, who created the movement, should have spoken. Merle Evers was supposedly invited to speak, but she was not in town and they didn't notify her, so they let Daisy Bates speak for only 1 minute and cut her off. Gloria Richardson only got to say hello, she was cut off. Rosa Parks only got to say hello, she was cut off. Josephine Baker didn't even get to say hello, and 2 or 3 others. But it did open the doorway to where the whole population of the country began to see that, oh yeah, we should have a democratic country, a more equal society. And that has been the inspiration. It was inspiration for the entire world. Prague Spring and the general strike in France and many other things around the world came out of that. And we have been on a hardcore move to reverse and abolish the 20th century, and we better wake up and keep moving forward. And it's still possible while we still have democratic structures in this country, and I appreciate the way the council operates usually, and thank you for advancing the public interest to whatever degree you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to come speak? Final call, public invited to be heard? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close. Final call, public invited to be heard. Now it's time for mayor and council comments. Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier this evening, we had an executive session to review the city attorney's performance and review his compensation package. So at this time, I would like to move that we move the total compensation package for the city attorney to market.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote.
No discussion?
Okay, do you want to? Okay.
It's not done.
Okay, 7-0 passes. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Hopefully I won't cough through this, but my business of the week this week is in honor of all of the candidates in the room. You'll need to go visit Forrest at Instant Imprints at 372 Main Street to get your signs, banners, and other electioneering materials. And I hope all of you really do stay in Longmont and spend your money here. Thank you.
Councilmember Witt.
Earlier this week, we received an email from Don Carpenter, who's involved over at the Senior Center, and he made us aware that congratulations are in order for a successful senior softball season. The 50 and over team came in first of 53 teams along the Front Range. So shout out to the seniors on that team and the other successful teams that are active. And one of the many great things that makes Longmont super is our senior center, and our senior center is a jewel, and it is well known throughout the Front Range for being well staffed. We have a great staff over there, great programs, and if you haven't gone over to visit the senior center and you might be looking for something to do and you might be in that age range, which I should be sometime soon, then go over and check them out.
Councilmember Levison.
Yes, Mayor. I would just like to ask people to put a save the date on your calendar. The Latino Chamber of Commerce is hosting their Multicultural Business Expo on Thursday, September 26th, beginning, I believe, at 10 o'clock in the morning and going until 3. They're going to have some good speakers, and I think they'll have quite a number of vendors there, too. So I just would like people to set it on their date to even just come for lunch that day with the Latino Chamber and the attendees.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Like you said either last week or the week before, I like the public invited to be heard at the end because then we can talk. So even after this comment, Ms. Malloy, I'd like to talk to you. Just sharing my thoughts on what you had to say, not to mean that the other two, Bob and Strider, that your comments were not as neat and eloquent as Ms. Malloy, but I talk to you all the time. But I kind of whenever I hear comments like that, I always think of Sim City. When I was a kid, it was one of my favorite games, trying to figure out how to raise taxes and not tick people off, but at the same time get enough money to service your city and meet the needs of the poor as well as the essential services. And so we can talk more about this. Part of the reason, like the mall, for example, once we have more incoming sales tax and revenues, we can use those monies for the types of services that you were asking us to consider. Or when I vote for a high-density project, property taxes that we can then use for those kind of services. So just wanted you to know your comments did not go on deaf ears as I sat here thinking, okay, well, what can we do? And so thanks.
Councilmember Samori.
Just a reminder that Coffee with Council is this Saturday at Mr. Bean at 17th and Hover. And it's Councilmember Samori and Finley. Come and join us.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'd like to give my condolences to Jack Mitchell's family. He's was our insurance rep for Pump House Brewery, did our health insurance, and he died of West Nile. He's a Firestone resident, so condolence to that family. And, you know, this is a region, so sometimes things still affect our city, even though it's not directly in our city. It's affecting our business. So also, I'd like to thank the council for supporting the broadband initiative and making us, I'm real proud of this council. I'd like to share another little story. During the Sister Cities thing, I met a young kid named Eduardo, Niwot High School kid, senior, great kid, taking all kinds of AP classes. He's going out for football, just hard worker. But anyway, I had him come over to my house and do some building on rebuilding a deck stairway. And yeah, just a sharp kid, great worker. So, I mean, there's just a lot of great quality kids in this town that I'm real proud of. So, you know, I hope other people give these kids a chance to show what they can do. So, with that, I guess I'll end. Is there anybody else like to? All right. Time for city managers. Do you have any additional remarks?
No, sir.
All right. City attorney, any remarks?
Mayor and Council, just wanted to thank Council for taking the time to do the performance evaluation. I found it to be very instructive and look forward to working with you in the future.
All right. This meeting is adjourned.